You might have seen military drills before, heard of exercises like the US-led RIMPAC. But did you know there are tabletop war games?
Below.
I don't mean Risk or Battleship, but games that actually emulate past, present, and potential future wars. And the region garnering the most attention is the Taiwan Strait.
It's been really popular as of late to play a lot of Taiwan war games, a lot of Indo-Pacific games.
These games are specifically designed to analyze how countries and their militaries might react in a war situation and what information commanders on the ground would need to make better decisions. Today we're playing two tabletop war games, one that's developed with help from the US's Pentagon and one that is openly available for purchase.
It's a bit nerve-wracking because, they're pieces on a board, but these are all sailors and these are all, American lives, and it's a bit kind of ominous to see that in one turn, carrier goes down, lives are lost, and haven't even touched the Chinese.
It requires 3 hits, man.
You need 2 hits, yeah.
Or 2 hits, yeah.
I'm trusting them. Let's go full send with it.
All right, full 4, right? So go ahead. All right.
And that's good stuff.
All right. So essentially he revealed himself, fired a bunch of anti-satellite weapons, essentially shot these bad boys down, and they will go away, right? All right, next.
This isn't your weekend board game night, but a war game club at Georgetown University. We traveled to Washington, D.C. to see how and why tabletop war games involving Taiwan are gaining so much popularity. Along the way, we meet Sophia Chang. She helps run the War Game Club at the university, which is supervised by Professor Sebastian Bay.
I love the idea of looking at the world through frameworks. I think that's really interesting to look at the various factors that go into a given issue and then condense it into a single game that you can play and learn about how those factors interact with each other.
While some people enjoy playing out historical wars, war games centered on the Taiwan Strait have grown in popularity, along with concerns over a conflict with China.
It's more of a draw than any of our other games, honestly. It's such a relevant issue, and a lot of people are curious to see what people who could potentially be in professional military education, how they're thinking about Taiwan and what they think the outcomes could be. Of course, we try to steer people away from thinking about predictions and thinking more about how should we be considering the Taiwan invasion, right? And what does a victory condition in that scenario look like?
The game they usually play is called Littoral Commander, with Taiwan in the Indo-Pacific map.
Littoral Commander Indo-Pacific is a commercially available educational game for professional military education.
Sebastian Bay is the designer of the Littoral Commander series, and as a former Marine on the front lines in Iraq, he saw potential for the board game to help future officers.
Although it is available to hobbyists and anyone off the street, it was originally designed to help young Marines and young commanders to really look at the future of warfare and how they can think about tactical decision making when you have different technologies, different geographies, different tactical problems, and how do you work together to solve those problems.
After Sebastian walks me through the game and all the pieces are set, we make the teams. We play as defense against a Chinese invasion, and that started with the roll of the dice.
Got one more task force, which is these guys over here.
Yep.
And it's these guys right down here. We've got the precision strike missiles. We can unload with those guys.
Even if they're not revealed.
We should have a revealed unit.
No, they hide them.
They hide them.
Oh yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was
I
thinking.
forgot that one was just got revealed in order to defend.
So we're in a bit of a
We're in a
pickle.
little bit of a pickle here, but also it could be worse.
So one of the things you guys are are feeling, right, in this situation is that you know where they are relatively, but not enough to do precision strikes, right? So the idea is that even though your weapons may have range and you could strike them if you wanted to, you don't have enough detail or ISR, right, to target ships accurately, right?
You say that this does not accurately depict a real world scenario, but I mean ISR. This is one of the reasons why ISR is so important.
Yeah. So the game in terms of the scenario, the game doesn't represent the massive volume of troops that will come across, right? Or even the massive amount of capabilities that will be applied on the other side, right? It's really a small idea. It's like, hey, you're a battalion commander, you're a company commander, and you're on the beaches of Taiwan right now, and the first wave is coming. How do you solve your slice of the pie, right?
I think this is a good segue into talking about what that bigger pie is. The fact that if a conflict around Taiwan erupts, it really will affect other countries in the region. And that's where Mark Cantian from CSIS comes in.
So I want to start with, before we even start playing, just the amount of Chinese military activity that we're seeing before the game starts. Is that normal?
Yes, it is. And what you're seeing are a couple of things. The first is the Chinese have a very large, powerful military. They've had this buildup that's been going on for over 20 years. And what you're seeing on the board here is the result of that buildup, a very large fleet and a very large air force.
Mark is the director of the CSIS Wargaming department and makes these maps specifically on the world's most likely conflict zones. And number one on the list was the Taiwan Strait. Governments have long simulated what could happen in a war between the US and China over Taiwan, but never as open as this.
So if we're ready to go, does the war game start now?
Yes, the war game would start now. The first move would be that the Chinese will use their missiles. They have a very, very large missile inventory. You can see number of salvos here, lots of missiles. This is a major part of the Chinese military capability. There are a couple of things that the missiles will target. They will go after U.S. Surface ships. Here we have 2 carriers right here. And very often the Chinese will go after those. We have a surface action group out here. Of course, the submarines are not vulnerable to the missiles. The other thing they'll go after is air bases to attack aircraft on the ground. Here they would probably go after Kadena Air Force Base on Okinawa, and this is Guam over here, Andersen Air Force Base. Opportunity for mechanics and the need for having some analysis, particularly in the public spaces. The Pentagon has done a lot of work that's classified, that's not available to the public. Little bits and pieces leak out, but you don't really know what's behind them. So the opportunity to provide an analysis, a war game that could look at this in depth over many iterations, many different scenarios arose, and that's where this project came from.
The scenario is the same. The year is 2026 and China has decided to invade Taiwan. Scenarios on how China invades are run over and over again, each time with small variations, with every game taking days to play. In 2023, Mark and his team at CSIS played 24 rounds, or iterations as they call them, to see what would happen.
We had many experts look at this and comment on it, so we're confident that what we've represented here is a fair view of what a conflict might look like. Now, keep in mind that we've run this in a dozen scenarios, so that doesn't mean that any particular scenario is going to be what the future looks like, but we think that the spectrum of scenarios is a reasonable view of what the future might hold. Having said that, we also recognize that surprises happen. There may be scenarios we never imagined. There could be capabilities that we really didn't appreciate. So there's always the opportunity for surprise.
All of that was collected into this report. Out of the 24 games, 22 saw the United States and Taiwan winning.
Our finding is that the United States and the coalition can maintain an autonomous and democratic Taiwan. So in that sense, they win. On the other hand, we know that this comes at very high cost.
And what they mean by winning is that China didn't succeed in taking complete control of Taiwan. And that was only under these specific conditions. 1, Taiwan forces must hold the line. 2, unlike Ukraine, which is getting weapons through its borders, all the things Taiwan needs for its defense must be on the island as soon as possible and before the shooting starts. Number 3, the United States must be able to use its bases in Japan. And finally, number 4, the US must have enough long-range missiles. Each of these conditions for success also comes with recommendations for the Pentagon, along with an entire chapter on what policy changes need to be made in order to better prepare for these scenarios. Since the release of this report, Taiwan has received shipments of anti-tank and anti-air weapons and has also doubled down on its anti-ship capabilities. The U.S. is also moving towards increasing production of long-range missiles, the same ones that were used in those simulations. And it's these lessons where we really see the value of these war games.
I love running it for my Georgetown students because they're all graduate students, and a lot of them didn't serve. A lot of them don't know the tactical realities of what conflict will look like, right? What a DF-21D will do, or a DDG, early Burke will do, and so forth. And this is a way for them to expose that knowledge. So when they say, hey, we should definitely do X policy or Y policy, they understand what that really means at that ground level, right? Because sometimes policies can seem abstract, right? They can be 30,000 feet in the air, right? And a lot of times it's a great way to expose our young graduate students to those kind of realities of, like, when you say you're going to intervene in X crisis, right? This is what it means. This is what putting 500 men on a destroyer and sending them into danger means, right? That this is the risk you're sending.
War is an uncomfortable topic, and of course we have to make games about it so that we can think about what we'll do in a given scenario. There are so many possible outcomes, and war has so many uncertainties that if we're not constantly thinking about it, right, and of course the best medium for that is through war games, then we're not going to be prepared for when it happens.
Well, the alternative to not doing it as a game is to do it for real, which would be far worse. Doing it as a game to give us analysis about what the demands might be and how we might better prepare, I think, is a very reasonable step. Having said that, I do recognize that this makes future conflict look maybe more antiseptic than it is. We have carrier battle groups that are sinking, and we don't see the ship sinking. We don't see the sailors being killed and injured. That's very real.
No one truly wins in a war. Seeing losses from both sides in these war games, you really get an understanding of the human cost that comes with an open conflict. I remember playing one move with Mark, and in 3 days, a Chinese missile took out a US carrier and killed about 6,000 people. And so whether it's Mark's game or Sebastian's, the hope is that these scenarios remain on the tabletop and not in the real world.